And welcome back. And it's the 17th of January today, and we're on to the 5 a day. It looks like there's 4 questions, but actually one of those questions has a few parts. So technically more than 5 questions, but let's get going anyway. Okay, so this first question, a pretty standard functions question, could be a GCSE question, could be a further maths question. It gives you a function and it wants the inverse. Now, this is, well, we call it in our school, x only appears once, because x only appears once, obviously. But that means that we can solve it in a couple of ways. So we can either use the flowchart method, or what I think frankly is a safer method of you say y equals the function you're trying to rearrange. So y equals 8 minus 5x over 3. And then you rearrange it so that says x equals. So firstly, I'm going to do the reverse trick. It's not a trick, it's just the name I'm giving it. 8 minus 5x over 3. So just to explain what I've done there, because it's quite clever, works easily, and is obviously correct. So what I've done is I've said, for example, 12 minus 8 is 4. I can just switch these two things around because 12 minus 4 must also be 8. And I've done that with the 2 minus, and I've left the 5 minus 8x over 3 on its own. Then I'm going to multiply both sides by 3, which is going to give me 6 minus 3y equals 5 minus 8x. Then I'm going to do the switch it around trick again. So I've got 5 minus 6 minus 3y plus 3y is equal to 8x, which means, let's put this box over here, that x is going to be equal to 3y minus 1, because 5 minus 6 is minus 1, divided by 8. But let's remember that is not my answer. I need to redo the answer in terms of g of x. So g of x is equal to 3x minus 1 divided by 8. That is the first question done. Next question. Okay, so I've got a couple of inequalities. Write down an inequality for each of the following: ab, a squared, a over b. Okay. So a quick think. The key to this question, I've just realised, is all these numbers are negative. So therefore, when I'm doing a negative times a negative, it's a positive. Negative squared is a positive. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. So actually, it's quite a clever question. It's basically involving you understanding what makes a number more negative, but then larger when you multiply it by each other. So what do I mean by that? For example, a times b. The smallest I can make a times b is take the smallest, or the value closest to 0 of a, and multiply it by the value closest to 0 of b, and that's going to give me 2, because again the negative gives you a positive. And the largest value is going to be the number furthest from 0 in a, in other words minus 6. Multiply that by minus 4, and that gives you 24. And let's make sure we answer the question. So therefore it's the case that 2ab 24. In other words, I've given you a range for AB, which is between, but not including 2 and 24. A squared. Well, the smallest I can make a squared is do 1 times 1. So that's going to give me 1. And the largest I can make a squared is going to be 6 times 6, or technically minus 6 times minus 6, which is 36. So this one is going to be between 1 a squared and 36. And again, it's a strict inequality. Right, a divided by b. So to get the biggest number you can, you take the biggest a value, again in an absolute sense, and you divide by the smallest b value. So therefore the largest value is going to be 6, again technically minus 6, let's put the minus in, divided by the smallest b value, which is minus 2, and that's going to give you 3. And then the smallest value I can guess is take the smallest value of a, which is minus 1, divide by the biggest value of b, which is minus 4, and that's going to give you a quarter. Which means that a divided by b, so a divided by b is between a quarter and 3. It's a good question, that. It could shows understanding of inequalities and how to sort of mix negatives with positives. It leads a little bit to questions you might see a bit later on, but yeah, well worded, clever question. Next question. The unit square AOBC is transformed by a reflection in the y-axis. Okay, let's do these carefully. So what I'm doing, I'm going to do a sketch in between. So I start with this, the unit square. I reflect it in the y-axis, so it moves to the other side, so minus 1, 1. Followed by enlargement implicitly in the x and y-axis, scale factor 4. So therefore it's still a unit square, except now this is minus 4 and 4. What is the matrix of the combined transformation? Okay, easiest way of doing this question. is you think about, I'm going to overlay here. So think about my original 1, 0. So there's my original 1, 0. That becomes, and I'll draw a red in the endpoint, that goes over to here because it reflects in the y-axis, gets 4 times bigger. In other words, that changes into minus 4, 0. And my original 0, 1, which I'll do in green, which is this one here, well, it stays the same direction, just it moves up 4 times. So in other words, 0, 1 goes to 0, 4. And this is my transformation matrix, because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm changing the unit vectors into these new into these new vectors, not unit vectors, in the relative direction. Good question, actually. I like that question. Well done if you got all of those today. A nice little mix of questions today. So started okay, clever little inequality question, and a matrix question at the end. As ever, like, subscribe, comments below. I will reply to them, and I'll see you for the next one. Thanks all.